Her spear broke as she was encircled. Then a human fell from the sky. "Mind if I enter the fight?" Smoke rolled across the broken plains, thick and bitter, carrying the smell of melted metal and scorched stone. Once this land had been a place of tall crystal towers and singing wind paths. Now it was nothing more than shattered ground and fallen bodies. Kelaris stood alone at the center of it. Her armor was cracked along the chest and shoulder, the deep blue surface dulled by ash and blood. One of her arms trembled from exhaustion, and her breathing came in short, sharp pulls. She had been fighting for too long, far longer than her body could endure. Around her the enemy closed in. They moved in a wide circle, slow and confident. Heavy boots crushed debris beneath their feet. Their armor was dark and smooth, marked with sharp red symbols that glowed faintly in the smoke. Each one carried a weapon aimed directly at her. They were not afraid. Why would they be? She was the last. Kelaris tightened her grip on her spear. The weapon hummed weakly, its energy field flickering like a dying flame. The shaft was cracked near the base, the result of too many blocked strikes and too much force. She had lost her squad hours ago. She remembered their final stand, how they had formed a shield wall, how they had held the line even as the enemy poured through the ruins. One by one they had fallen, calling her name, ordering her to survive. She had obeyed. And now survival had led her here. The enemy commander stepped forward. He was taller than the rest, his armor marked with gold lines that showed rank and authority. His helmet tilted slightly as he studied her, like a hunter judging wounded prey. "You fought well," he said, his voice amplified and cold. "For your kind." Kelaris did not answer. Her eyes scanned the circle, counting enemies. 12, no 14, more than enough. The commander raised his hand. "This ends now." The soldiers lifted their weapons. Kelaris set her stance. Her legs burned, her vision blurred at the edges. Still, she raised her spear. She would not kneel. The first enemy charged. She moved on instinct alone. The spear flashed, striking the attacker's armor with a burst of light. The enemy staggered back, but the impact sent a sharp crack through the spear's shaft. The weapon screamed. Kelaris felt it before she saw it. The energy field collapsed with a sharp snap, and the spear broke cleanly in half. The top portion clattered to the ground, dark and dead. For a single terrible moment, the battlefield went silent. The enemy soldiers stopped advancing. The commander let out a low, satisfied sound. Kelaris stared at the broken weapon in her hands. The spear was more than a tool. It was a symbol. It had been given to her when she became a defender of her people. It had carried her through years of battle. Now it was gone. Slowly, she let the broken shaft fall from her fingers, her hands curled into fists. She straightened her back. If this was the end, she would face it standing. The commander raised his weapon. "Finish it!" The soldiers moved in. Then the ground shook. At first it was faint, just a distant tremor beneath the ruined earth. Several soldiers paused, glancing around in confusion. The shaking grew stronger. Dust fell from broken stones. Small fragments of metal rattled across the ground. Kelaris felt it too, a deep vibration that did not match any weapon she knew. The commander looked up. So did everyone else. High above the battlefield, the clouds began to twist. The smoke parted as if pushed aside by an unseen force. A bright point of light appeared in the sky, growing larger by the second. It burned white-hot. Alarms screamed from enemy armor systems. Red warning symbols flashed across visors. "Orbital debris?" one soldier asked. "No," another said. "Trajectory is controlled." The light became a blazing line, tearing through the atmosphere with a roar that shook the air itself. Fire wrapped around it, trailing behind like the tail of a comet. Kelaris raised an arm to shield her eyes. The object struck the ground less than 20 meters away. The impact was violent. The explosion threw soldiers off their feet. Shockwaves slammed into Kelaris, sending her crashing backward. The ground split and a massive cloud of dust and fire swallowed everything. For a moment there was nothing but noise. Then silence returned. Slowly the dust began to settle. Kelaris pushed herself up, her ears ringing. Her vision cleared just enough for her to see a deep crater where the object had landed. The ground around it glowed red from heat. Something moved inside the smoke. A figure stood up. It was tall, but not as tall as the enemy commander. Its shape was strange, smooth armor, simple lines, no glowing marks or ceremonial designs. The armor was dark, scorched in places, but intact. The figure reached up and removed its helmet. Kelaris blinked. The face beneath was unfamiliar. Pale skin, Two forward-facing eyes, no facial plates, no markings of rank or clan, an alien, no, she realized suddenly. A human, the species registered in her mind with surprise. Humans were known. They were part of the wider galactic community, but distant, small, considered average in strength, limited in numbers, cautious in war. They were not known for standing alone in enemy war zones. The human rolled his shoulders as if stretching after a long fall. He looked around the battlefield, taking in the broken land, the encircling soldiers, and finally Kalaris herself. His eyes met hers. He smiled. It was calm, almost friendly. He activated an external speaker on his suit. "Hey," he said, his voice clear and relaxed, as if he were not surrounded by armed enemies. "Sorry I'm late." The enemy commander recovered first. "Identify yourself," he demanded. The human glanced at him, then back at Kalaris. He looked down at the broken spear on the ground, then back up again. "Tough spot," he said, then he turned fully toward the commander. "Mind if I enter the fight?" For a second, no one moved. Then the commander laughed. "A single human," he said. "You fall from the sky just to die with her?" The human shrugged. "Wouldn't be the first time." The commander raised his hand sharply. "Kill them both." Weapons powered up. Before the soldiers could fire, the human took one step forward, just one. The air around him shifted. Kalaris felt it, a pressure change, sharp and sudden. The ground beneath the human cracked slightly, as if reacting to an unseen force. The first volley of shots fired. They never reached him. Some deflected at strange angles. Others simply stopped, dropping lifelessly to the ground. A few exploded midair, harmlessly dispersing their energy. The soldiers froze, the human sighed. "Yeah," he said quietly. "This was never going to be a fair fight." Kalaris stared. Hope, small, fragile, and dangerous, sparked in her chest. The sky above them rumbled again, and for the first time since the battle began, the enemy took a step backward. They were trained not to pause, not to doubt. They had surrounded stronger enemies than this before. Entire cities had fallen under their advance. One human should have meant nothing, but something about the way he stood made them uneasy. He did not take cover. He did not raise a weapon. He stood in the open, hands relaxed at his sides, as if the battlefield belonged to him. The commander's voice cut through the silence. "Fire!" he ordered again, sharper this time. The soldiers obeyed. Energy bolts streaked toward the human, bright lines cutting through the smoke. Kalaris tensed, expecting to see him torn apart. Instead, the human moved. He stepped forward, not fast, not slow, but at exactly the right moment. His hand lifted slightly, fingers spreading. The air shimmered. The energy bolts bent. Some curved away, missing him by meters. Others slammed into invisible resistance and scattered like sparks against stone. One shot rebounded entirely, striking the armor of the soldier who fired it and knocking him off his feet. Shock rippled through the enemy line. "What is that?" someone shouted. The human sighed again, sounding almost bored. "Personal gravity field," he said aloud, as if explaining to children. "Standard issue." Kalaris stared. Standard. Her people's strongest shields required teams of engineers and massive power cores. This human wore something stronger, like a second skin. The commander snarled. "Close the distance. Overwhelm him." Several soldiers rushed forward, weapons switching to close-range modes. Blades of hard light extended from their gauntlets. The human tilted his head slightly, watching them come. Then he moved. He did not fight like any species Kalaris had seen. There was no wasted motion, no wide swings or loud battle cries. He stepped aside, grabbed a wrist, twisted, and used the enemy's own momentum against them. Armored joints failed. Balance broke. Bodies hit the ground hard. One soldier tried to strike from behind. The human leaned forward just enough for the blade to pass over his shoulder. He reached back, caught the attacker by the arm, and flipped them over his hip. The soldier slammed into the ground and did not rise. Kalaris realized something that sent a chill through her. The human was holding back. He could end this faster. She could see it in the precision of his movements, in the way he measured every action. He was choosing not to. The commander backed away, disbelief creeping into his voice. "Humans are not this capable. Your species profile was wrong," the human finished calmly. Another group charged, this time using heavy weapons. The human reached to his belt and pulled free a small device, no larger than his palm. He tossed it gently. It landed between the soldiers and activated with a soft click. The ground beneath the enemies collapsed inward, gravity spiking suddenly. The soldiers were slammed to the ground, pinned by invisible force, weapons torn from their hands. They screamed, not in pain, but in fear. The human walked past them without a glance. Kelaris pushed herself to her feet, her legs still unsteady. She picked up the broken half of her spear without thinking, holding it like a short staff. The human noticed. "You good?" he asked, glancing at her. She nodded once. "I can still fight," he smiled slightly. "That's usually enough." The commander shouted into his comm unit, panic breaking through his control. "Request immediate reinforcement. This is a hostile human combatant with unknown technology." The human looked up at the sky. "They already know," he said. The commander froze. "What?" The human tapped the side of his helmet. "I broadcast my landing the moment I hit atmosphere. Every human ship within range heard it." Kelaris felt her breath catch. "You came alone," she said. He shook his head. "No, I came first." The sky rumbled again, deeper this time. Enemy dropships roared overhead, descending fast. Heavy units deployed, larger and more heavily armored than the soldiers on the ground. Their weapons glowed with dangerous power. The commander straightened, relief flooding his posture. "You are surrounded, human." The human nodded. "Yeah, that's kind of our thing." The heavy units fired. The human activated something new. The battlefield changed. The ground shifted violently, sections of ruined terrain rising and falling as if the planet itself were responding to him. Enemy formations broke apart as footing disappeared. One heavy unit stumbled into a newly formed trench, crashing hard. Kelaris stared in disbelief. "You're controlling the terrain," she said. The human corrected her gently. "I'm letting physics do the work. I'm just nudging it." He moved again, faster now. A heavy unit swung a massive arm. The human slid beneath it, planted a device against its armor, and kicked off, launching himself backward. A moment later, the device detonated, not with fire, but with force. The unit was lifted off the ground and thrown sideways, crashing into another. Enemy coordination collapsed. Orders overlapped. Commands contradicted each other. Units hesitated, unsure how to counter a single enemy who did not follow any known doctrine. The commander screamed into his comm again, voice breaking. "What are you?" The human stopped and looked directly at him. "We're the species you labeled manageable," he said. "The one you decided you could ignore." He took a step closer. "We don't like being ignored." A sudden explosion rocked the far edge of the battlefield. A distant enemy artillery platform went dark, its power core disabled with impossible precision. Kelaris looked toward the horizon. "That wasn't you." The human smiled wider now. "Nope." The sky split open. Not with fire, but with light. Human ships emerged from warp, sleek and functional, their designs focused on purpose rather than beauty. They did not line up in threatening formations. They spread out, positioning themselves with careful intent. The enemy commander collapsed to his knees. "This sector was under our control," he whispered. The human's voice was calm, almost kind. "You controlled it until someone stronger cared." Dropships streaked down, not enemy ones this time. Human insignia flashed across their hulls. They landed with controlled force, doors opening as human soldiers deployed in organized waves. They did not rush. They secured. Medics moved immediately, scanning the battlefield for survivors, enemy and ally alike. Kelaris watched in stunned silence. The humans did not shout victory cries. They did not execute prisoners. They moved like professionals finishing a task. The human who had fallen from the sky turned back to her. "Name?" he asked. "Kelaris," she replied. "Defender of the—" She stopped, her voice tightening. "Of what remains of my people." He nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I'm Lieutenant Aaron Hale." He looked at the broken spear in her hands. "You fought long enough," he said. "We've got it from here." Kelaris felt something unfamiliar rise in her chest, relief. Not the weak kind that comes with surrender, but the strong kind that comes with knowing the fight will continue, and that it might finally be won. Around them, the enemy forces laid down their weapons. For the first time since the war began, the battlefield belonged to someone else. And across the stars, alarms sounded as a new truth spread through enemy command networks. Humans were no longer distant observers. They had entered the fight. Smoke still drifted across the broken land. Fires burned in small patches where weapons had struck. Enemy soldiers knelt on the ground, their weapons placed carefully in front of them. Human troops moved among them, scanning, marking, securing. Kelaris stood near the edge of the crater where the human had fallen from the sky. She watched everything. The humans did not celebrate. They did not shout or boast. They worked with focus and speed, like builders repairing damage rather than warriors enjoying victory. This confused her. Wars to her people were emotional things. Rage, honor, grief, these shaped every battle, but the humans seemed distant, not cold, controlled. Lieutenant Hale spoke quietly into his comm unit. Ground secured, enemy command fractured. Minimal losses on our side. He listened for a moment, then nodded. Understood. He turned to Calaris. You should sit, he said. Medics will check you. I am fine, she replied, though her legs still felt weak. A human medic approached anyway. She did not force Calaris down, only scanned her with a small device. Multiple fractures, the medic said calmly. Nothing critical will stabilize you. Calaris barely noticed. Her attention was elsewhere. She was watching the sky. More human ships arrived, not all at once, but in measured intervals. Each ship took a specific position. None wasted movement. The enemy commander was brought forward, hands bound by a soft energy restraint. His posture was rigid, his eyes filled with disbelief. You tricked us, he said, staring at Hale. This was not a rescue, this was an invasion. Hale shook his head. No, this was a response. The commander scoffed. To one battle, one dying species? Hale's expression hardened just slightly. No, he said, to a pattern. He turned and pointed at the ruins around them. You don't just fight armies, you erase worlds, you surround, you exhaust, you wait for extinction to do the work. The commander said nothing. Hale continued, his voice steady. Humans don't wait for extinction. He tapped his wrist console. The ground trembled again, but this time it was controlled. From the sky, small objects fell, not weapons, but machines. They landed gently, unfolding into tall structures that began scanning the terrain. Calaris watched in awe. What are those? Fabricators, Hale said. Temporary bases, power relays, defense nodes. She looked at him. You are building during a battle, he nodded. Battles are temporary, infrastructure lasts. The enemy commander stared at the machines. You are fortifying enemy land. Hale corrected him. We're stabilizing a war zone. Calaris slowly understood. The humans were not here to win a single fight. They were here to change the shape of the war itself. A human officer approached Hale. Lieutenant, enemy signals detected. Multiple fleets moving in system. The enemy commander smiled weakly. My people will crush you with numbers. Hale did not look worried. Good, he said. That saves us time. Calaris turned to him sharply. You want more of them to come? Yes, Hale replied. We want them to commit. She struggled to understand. Why? Hale looked at her, choosing his words carefully. Because if they retreat now, they learn nothing. If they lose everything here, they learn fast. The enemy commander's smile faded. The sky darkened as enemy ships emerged from warp. Large, heavily armed, designed for dominance, human ships did not rush to meet them. They waited. Human commanders spoke calmly across open channels. Orders were short and clear. Calaris heard one phrase repeated again and again. Hold position, let them move. The enemy fleets advanced, weapons powering up. Energy readings spiked across the system. Calaris's heart raced. Even with human help, this force was enormous. Hale stood still, watching the data scroll across his visor. Are you not afraid? She asked. He answered honestly. We were a long time ago. The first enemy volley fired. Human ships did not dodge. Instead, space itself seemed to bend. Enemy shots stretched, slowed, then dispersed harmlessly as they passed through carefully shaped gravity fields. The enemy fleets faltered. Human ships responded not with overwhelming fire, but with precision. Power grids went dark. Communication arrays failed. Navigation systems glitched. Enemy ships began colliding, not destroyed, but disabled. Calaris gasped. You're not killing them. Hale nodded. Not unless we have to. Enemy commanders screamed orders, trying to regain control, but every attempt was countered before it finished. Human electronic warfare spread like a silent storm. Then the humans escalated. Massive platforms unfolded from larger ships, structures that looked more like factories than weapons. What are those? Calaris whispered. Orbital denial systems, Hale replied. We don't block space, we rewrite it. The platforms activated. Suddenly, safe jump routes vanished. Warp points destabilized. Enemy ships attempting to retreat found themselves trapped, unable to leave without tearing themselves apart. The enemy commander fell to his knees again. This system is dead, he said. Hale shook his head. No, your control reminds us that we don't fight to survive. We fight to end threats. On the ground, human troops moved outward, securing territory far beyond the original battlefield. Supply lines formed instantly. Medical stations treated wounded aliens alongside humans. Kelaris watched an enemy soldier receive medical aid from a human medic. "Why help them?" she asked. Hale answered quietly. "Because war ends faster when enemies live long enough to remember losing." The enemy fleets finally broke. Some surrendered, others powered down, realizing resistance was useless. The system fell silent. A human admiral appeared on a holographic display. "Lieutenant Hale, Phase 1 complete." "Yes, Admiral," Hale replied. "Begin Phase 2, the Admiral ordered. The display vanished. Kelaris felt a chill. "Phase 2, Hale looked at the stars. "Now we teach the galaxy." Across the system, human signals activated, broadcasts sent on every known frequency. Not threats, not insults, records, clear, detailed recordings of the battle, enemy tactics analyzed, human responses explained. A message repeated again and again. This is what happens when you choose extinction over coexistence. Kelaris felt something heavy lift from her chest. For the first time, she believed her people might survive. The enemy commander stared at the broadcast in horror. "You're not just fighting us," he whispered. "You're changing everything." Hale looked at him. "Yes," he said, "that's what escalation means to us." Kelaris looked at the human soldier who had fallen from the sky alone. "What happens now?" she asked. Hale met her gaze. "Now," he said, "we make sure no one ever corners your people again." Above them, human ships held the sky. And for the first time in a long war, the future no longer looked empty. Kelaris stood on a high ridge overlooking what had once been the edge of the battlefield. From here, she could see the full shape of the human presence. Ships hovered in stable patterns above the planet, their lights steady and controlled. Platforms floated between orbit and atmosphere, humming with power. This was not chaos. This was order. Human soldiers moved across the land below, not like conquerors, but like planners. Roads were cleared, ruins were stabilized, power nodes spread outward, forming a growing web of control. Kelaris felt small, not weak, but aware. Lieutenant Hale stood beside her, his helmet off, his eyes focused on a holographic display hovering above his wrist. Symbols moved and shifted constantly. "The enemy is regrouping," he said calmly. Kelaris frowned. "After what they lost?" "Yes," Hale replied. "Especially after that," she looked at him. "They still think they can win. They think numbers will save them," he said, "that if they bring enough fire, we'll back off." Kelaris folded her arms. "Will you?" Hale looked at her, then smiled faintly. "No." The warning came without sound. Across the system, enemy fleets exited warp all at once, dozens of ships, then hundreds. They filled space like a dark tide, blotting out stars. Kelaris felt fear tighten in her chest. "That is too many." Human commanders did not panic. Orders moved through human channels, smooth and fast. "Phase 2 confirmed. All systems green. Civilians clear." Kelaris noticed that last part. "You evacuated first." Hale nodded. "Always." The enemy fleets spread out, surrounding the system. Their weapons charged, lighting space with violent color. The enemy admiral's voice cut across open channels, loud and full of rage. "Human forces, withdraw immediately. This system belongs to us." Human channels remained silent. The enemy admiral continued. "You interfere in wars that are not yours. You stand against powers older than your species." Finally, a human voice replied, not Hale's, but calm and deep. "This system no longer belongs to extinction." The message ended. The enemy fired. Space turned bright. Energy waves surged toward the human fleet, enough power to shatter moons. Kelaris held her breath. The humans did not dodge. Instead, the sky changed. Human platforms activated in unison. Invisible lines snapped into place between ships, stations, and orbiting structures. Gravity shifted sharply. Enemy fire slowed. Then it bent. Then it broke apart, scattering into harmless light. The enemy fleets froze. Before they could react, the humans responded. Not with one attack, but thousands. From human ships, small objects launched in every direction. They were not missiles. They did not burn. They moved quietly. They spread. Enemy sensors screamed warnings too late. The objects attached themselves to enemy hulls, glowing briefly before sinking inside. "What did they fire?" Kelaris asked. Hale's eyes followed the display. "Keys," the enemy admiral shouted orders. "Return fire, all weapons." Nothing happened. Enemy weapons powered down, engines stalled, lights went dark across the fleets. Entire armadas drifted helplessly in space. Calaris stared in disbelief. You shut them down. Yes, Hale said, we removed their permission to function. The enemy admiral's voice returned, shaking now. What have you done? Hale spoke clearly across the channel. We mapped your technology years ago, you just never noticed. The enemy fleets tried to retreat. They could not, warp drives failed, navigation collapsed. Space itself felt wrong around them. Human orbital platforms expanded, unfolding into massive structures that blocked key escape paths. Calaris felt a strange sense of awe. You've trapped them. Hale corrected her gently. We've contained the threat. The enemy admiral whispered, you planned this. Yes, Hale said, the moment you chose extermination as policy. Across the system, human ships advanced, not fast, not slow, but steady. Enemy ships surrendered one by one, power cores dimming as systems shut down safely. Others tried desperate actions, overloading engines, firing blindly. Human countermeasures responded instantly, neutralizing threats before damage could spread. Calaris watched the battle end without the chaos she expected. No burning wrecks, no screaming channels, just silence. The enemy admiral finally spoke again. Why haven't you destroyed us? Hale answered without anger. Because destroyed enemies become stories. Living ones become warnings. On the ground, Calaris noticed something else. Human relief ships descended, not carrying troops, but supplies, food, medical equipment, shelter units. For prisoners, she asked. For everyone, Hale replied. She turned to him sharply. Even them. Yes, but they tried to wipe us out. I know, Hale said. That's why they need to see what happens instead. The enemy admiral lowered his head. This will be remembered, he said bitterly. Hale nodded. That's the point. A human officer approached. Lieutenant, broadcasts are ready. Send them, Hale ordered. Across known space, messages spread, not propaganda, evidence, recordings of the battle, data showing how quickly enemy control had collapsed. Clear proof of human capability, not exaggerated, not hidden, just facts. The message ended with a simple line, humanity will respond to extinction-level aggression. Calaris felt the weight of it settle across the galaxy. The enemy admiral looked up slowly. You've made us afraid. Hale looked at him evenly. No, you were already afraid. We just gave it shape. The fleets were secured, the system stabilized. Human ships held position, silent and watchful. Calaris finally allowed herself to sit. The exhaustion hit her all at once, Hale noticed. He offered her a small container of water. She accepted it. My people believed the sky abandoned us. Hale shook his head. The sky doesn't abandon anyone, it just takes time to answer. She looked up at the human ships above. Will you stay? Yes, he said, as long as it takes. Calaris closed her eyes. For the first time since her spear broke, she felt safe. Far away in enemy-controlled space, commanders stared at the same recordings, and one thought spread faster than fear, if humans came once. They could come again. Calaris woke inside a white shelter built by human machines. The walls were smooth and warm, glowing softly with light that did not hurt her eyes. For a moment she thought she had died. Then she felt the dull ache in her body, alive. She sat up slowly. Her armor was gone, replaced with simple clothing made to fit her shape. Her injuries were wrapped and sealed with care. A human medic noticed her movement. Easy, she said gently. You've been through a lot. Calaris studied her face, calm, tired, kind. Why am I alive? Calaris asked. The medic blinked. Because you were hurt. No, Calaris said. Why did you save me? The medic smiled softly. Because you mattered before we ever arrived. That answer stayed with her. Outside the shelter, the world had changed. Temporary cities had grown where ruins once stood. Human and alien workers moved side by side, repairing structures, restoring power, clearing dangerous debris. Medical tents treated everyone without question, even the enemy. Calaris saw them sitting quietly in marked areas, guarded but unharmed. Some stared at the ground. Others watched humans work with open confusion. Lieutenant Hale stood near a command platform, speaking with several officers. He noticed Calaris and walked over. You should still be resting, he said. I needed to see, she replied. He nodded, understanding. They are free, she said, pointing at the enemy prisoners. Why? They're not free, Hale said. They're accountable, she frowned. In my culture, mercy after attempted destruction is weakness. Hale did not argue. In ours, mercy is pressure. She looked at him sharply. Pressure? Yes, he said. They will live knowing what they failed to do and what we chose not to do. They walked together through the camp. Human soldiers shared food with civilians. Engineers taught local workers how to use human tools. Children, alien children, laughed as drones projected harmless light shapes above them. Calaris felt something tighten in her chest. "This is cruel," she said quietly. Hale stopped. "Cruel?" "Yes," she said. "You show them what they tried to destroy. You force them to see a future they wanted erased." Hale met her gaze. "Exactly." They reached a secured area where the enemy commander sat alone, no longer in armor. He looked smaller now, older. He saw Calaris and lowered his eyes. "You survived," he said. "So did you," she replied. He laughed bitterly. "That may be worse." Hale addressed him calmly. "Your people will be released in stages. You will return home with witnesses." "To tell what story?" the commander asked. Hale answered simply, "The truth." The commander looked up. "They will call us weak." "They will call you alive," Hale replied, "and afraid." The commander said nothing more. Later, a gathering was called. Human commanders, alien leaders, and neutral observers stood together as Hale spoke. His voice was carried by drones so all could hear. "This war did not begin with us," he said. "But it will not continue without us." He gestured to the repaired city behind him. "We will not occupy, we will not rule," murmurs spread. "We will protect," Hale continued. "And we will remember." He looked directly at the enemy delegation. "If extinction is attempted again, our response will not be limited." The message was clear. No threats, no shouting, just certainty. That night, Calaris stood alone, holding the broken pieces of her spear. Humans had offered to repair it, but she had refused, not yet. She thought of her fallen squad, of the moment she had stood surrounded, weapon broken, hope gone, and of the human who fell from the sky like an answer. Hale approached quietly. "You don't have to decide anything tonight," he said. She nodded. "I know." She looked at him. "Why do humans fight like this?" he considered. "Because we learned the hard way." "From whom?" "From ourselves." She tilted her head. "You nearly destroyed your own kind?" "Yes," Hale said softly, "more than once." That surprised her. "Then why not rule the galaxy now that you can?" Hale smiled sadly. "Because we remember what that felt like." Days passed. Enemy ships were released slowly, tracked and monitored. They left carrying stories they never wanted to tell. Across nearby systems, fighting paused. Then stopped, not because of fear alone, but because everyone was watching. Human diplomats arrived, not with demands but with terms written clearly, protection agreements, shared defense, mutual limits. Calaris watched other species listen carefully. The war was not over everywhere, but it was changing. One evening, Hale brought Calaris to a fabrication site. Human engineers worked beside alien craftsmen. "What are you making?" she asked. Hale gestured toward a glowing frame. "A spear." Her breath caught. "I said I did not want." "This one is different," he said. The spear took shape slowly. Human alloys blended with alien crystal, not stronger than necessary, not weaker, balanced. "This isn't a replacement," Hale said. "It's a continuation." Calaris stepped forward. She touched it carefully. It felt right. "What will you do now?" Hale asked. She looked out over the camp, over her people rebuilding, over former enemies helping clear rubble. "I will teach them what happened," she said, "and what could happen again." Hale nodded. "Good." She met his eyes. "And you?" "We'll stay close," he said. "Not above, not behind." "Beside," she finished. "Yes." Far away, in halls of power across the galaxy, leaders replayed the same recordings, not of destruction, but of restraint, and one truth became clear to all. Humanity's greatest weapon was not fire. It was the choice not to use it. Calaris stood inside the fabrication chamber, watching as human machines and alien tools worked together in careful balance. Soft hums filled the air. Streams of energy shaped metal and crystal with gentle precision. Her broken spear lay on a raised platform, not discarded, honored. Human engineers moved around it with quiet respect. They had asked questions before touching it, about its meaning, about its history. That mattered to her. Lieutenant Hale stood nearby, arms folded, observing without speaking. "They treat it like a relic," Calaris said softly. Hale nodded. "Some things deserve that." The spear began to change. Human alloy flowed into the fractures, not forcing the old material aside, but reinforcing it. Alien crystal reformed along the shaft, brighter than before, but familiar. The weapon was not replaced. It was continued. When the process ended, the chamber fell silent. A human technician stepped back. "It's ready." Calaris approached slowly. She reached out and took the spear in her hands. It felt balanced, strong, alive, not because of power, but because of purpose. "This spear will not break easily," Hale said. Kelaris shook her head. That is not why it matters. She looked at the weapon. It broke when I stood alone. It was reforged when I did not. Hale smiled. That's a lesson worth spreading. Outside the chamber, news traveled fast. Across nearby systems, other species watched and listened. They had seen the recordings. They had heard the stories. A single phrase began appearing in military reports and political briefings. Human drop event. It described the moment when a human entered a conflict without warning and everything changed, not always with battle. Sometimes with words, sometimes with silence. Delegations arrived. The first were cautious. Small groups, neutral species who had watched wars from a distance. They asked questions. What do humans want? Why did they intervene? Will you do it again? Human diplomats answered clearly. We want stability. We intervene against extinction. And yes, more delegations followed. Some came from worlds already under threat. Others came from powerful empires who suddenly wished to be friendly. Kelaris attended many of these meetings as an observer. She noticed something strange. No one spoke down to the humans. No one raised their voice. Even ancient species listened carefully. One delegate, tall and silver-skinned, asked directly, "Why should we trust you not to dominate us?" The human diplomat answered without hesitation. "Because domination creates resistance. We prefer cooperation." The delegate narrowed their eyes. "And if we refuse?" The diplomat smiled politely. "Then we will still protect civilians from extinction." That answer spread quickly, not as a threat, as a boundary. Kelaris began training again, not for war, but for leadership. Her people gathered around her as she practiced with the reforged spear. They watched the way she moved, stronger now, steadier. Children asked questions. "Will humans stay forever?" "No," she told them. "But they will not vanish." One child looked up at the sky. "Will they come if we are afraid again?" Kelaris thought of the human who fell like a star. "Yes," she said, "if we truly need them." Elsewhere, enemy leaders met in secret. They replayed the recordings again and again. The moment weapons failed, the moment fleets were trapped. One general slammed a fist against the table. "They didn't even try to destroy us." Another replied quietly, "That's what frightens me." Old strategies were abandoned. New doctrines written. Avoid provoking humans, avoid surrounding the weak, avoid extinction-level actions. Because the cost was no longer unknown, human military academies added a new case study: containment over annihilation. It was taught alongside one simple rule: if humans arrive, the war is already over. Lieutenant Hale prepared to leave the planet. Kelaris met him near the landing zone. Human ships lifted quietly behind him. "You're going," she said. "Yes," he replied. "Other fires need attention," she nodded. "Will you return?" He smiled. "Humans are very good at coming back." She held her spear upright. "This weapon carries your mark now." Hale shook his head. "No, it carries your choice." They stood in silence for a moment. "You changed the war," Kelaris said. "No," Hale corrected. "We changed the rules." As his ship lifted, Kelaris watched it rise into the clouds. The sky felt different now, not empty. Across the galaxy, new stories spread, not of unstoppable monsters, but of a species that watched quietly until it didn't, a species that did not retreat, a species that escalated with control. And somewhere far from this world, an enemy commander stared at the stars and whispered, "Check the sky." Because now everyone did. The war that once burned across the stars became a lesson instead of a wound. Not everywhere, not all at once. But slowly, like cooling metal, the galaxy changed shape. Kelaris stood on a high platform overlooking a rebuilt city. Crystal towers rose again, stronger than before, mixed now with human designs, simple, solid, made to last. Lights glowed softly in the evening air. Children ran through the streets below, laughing. That sound still felt unreal. She rested her hands on her spear. It no longer hummed with unstable energy. Its power was quiet now, steady, controlled. The weapon was not meant to break anymore. She was no longer just a warrior. She was a voice. Across the galaxy, her name had become tied to a moment in history, the point where extinction failed. Delegations still arrived, though less urgently now. Some came seeking alliance. Others came only to understand. One question always returned. "What happened that day?" And Kelaris would answer, "I stood surrounded, my weapon broke, and then a human fell from the sky." The story spread far beyond her world. In enemy space, children learned a different lesson than their parents had. Old commanders were replaced by cautious leaders. War doctrines changed. One phrase appeared again and again in strategic briefings: always check the sky. Not because humans were everywhere, but because they might be watching. On a distant border world, another battle nearly began. Two rival species faced each other across a narrow valley. Weapons were ready. Old anger burned hot. Then someone looked up. A single unknown object moved across the clouds, too fast, too controlled. No shots were fired that day. Both sides withdrew. Later, scanners confirmed the object was human. No message was sent. None was needed. Back on Calaris's world, a young alien stood beside her, eyes wide as they watched the sunset. "Is it true?" the child asked. "That humans don't like war," Calaris considered carefully. "They understand it." "That's not the same," the child said. "No," Calaris agreed. "It's more dangerous." Elsewhere, Lieutenant Aaron Hale stood on the bridge of a human ship, older now, streaks of gray at his temples. The stars stretched endlessly before him. A junior officer approached. "Sir, we're receiving a priority signal." Hale nodded. "Put it through." The hologram formed. It was Calaris. Her posture was calm, but her eyes were sharp. "There is unrest," she said. "Not here." Farther out, a species pushing old boundaries. Hale exhaled slowly. "Extinction level?" "Not yet," she replied, "but they are testing." Hale nodded once. "We'll adjust their expectations." She tilted her head. "Will you fall from the sky again?" He smiled faintly. "Only if needed." The transmission ended. Hale turned back to the stars. Human fleets moved, not in attack formation, but in presence. Patrols expanded. Observers watched quietly. The galaxy felt it, like pressure before a storm that never quite arrived. On Calaris's world, a ceremony was held, not for victory, for remembrance. Names of the fallen were spoken aloud. Human names were added, not those who died, but those who came. Calaris placed her spear upright at the center of the gathering. "This weapon broke once," she said, her voice carried clearly. "It broke when I stood alone." She lifted it again. "It was reforged when others chose to stand with us." She looked toward the sky. "The humans did not save us by fighting for us. They saved us by refusing to let us be erased." Silence followed, not empty silence, full silence. Far away in a once hostile capital world, an old enemy commander watched the ceremony on a public channel. His armor was gone, his rank stripped. He listened carefully. "They didn't conquer," someone beside him muttered. "They changed us." The commander nodded slowly. "That is worse and better." Years later, a child on a remote colony looked up at the stars and asked their parent a simple question. "Do you think humans are watching us right now?" The parent paused, then answered honestly. "I don't know." The child smiled. "I hope so." On the edge of known space, a human ship drifted silently, sensors wide open, not hunting, listening. Hale stood alone, hands behind his back. Humanity had learned many things over its long, violent history, but this lesson mattered most. You do not need to rule the sky to protect it. You only need to be willing to fall from it when someone is cornered. And somewhere on a world that once faced extinction, a spear stood unbroken.